Hello everyone and welcome back to Math 0332 videos. I'm Mr. Lee. We're continuing with Unit 2. This is the third homework assignment in Unit 2. It may not ask you to do this, but it's a good thing to review the properties that allow us to do the things that we're attempting to do. So let's go ahead and talk our way through that. It was kind of a combination of the previous three sections in that it does again talk about the properties, but also it has evaluating expressions and potentially simplifying expressions. So there won't be anything necessarily new in these, but we'll just cover a few of the things that we see when we're doing it. So one of the questions in the homework in the past had you do something like this so that we can talk through the steps on why we are allowed to do what we do. And even if you don't have any questions like that, it's still really good for us to be able to do. So let's review a few of the things. Normally, you'll have expressions, something like this, where there's no equal to sign as an expression. But it becomes an equation if you've got two sides with an equal sign in the middle, and it tells you that the two algebraic expressions are equal to each other, and that gives you more options on things that you're going to do to find answers for variables, which we'll see in the homework following this one, and actually several of the homeworks following this one. That'll become a common theme. Terms. Terms are things that are separated by plus or minus. So for example, in this one, this is a term, this is another term because it's separated by plus or minus. Inside the parentheses, the A and the 4 are terms, but in terms of this whole statement, this thing is its own term. Now, if inside specific terms, say if you had a term that was 20x, the number in front of the variable is called the coefficient, whereas x is now called the factor or the term. And particularly though, if two terms have the same factor, and that includes both the letter and the exponent, they are considered like terms. So this is our starting point. So this is choose the property that allows you to perform each step. So you notice from here to here, what happened? The 7 was distributed to both of the terms to get 7a minus 28. So that was the distributive property that allowed you to make that equivalent statement. From here, what happened to the next line? The negative 28 and 7a were reversed in their positioning, and we know that because of addition, that you can change the order without changing the outcome. So by changing the order here, this used the commutative property of addition to allow them to switch places without changing the overall value of the statement. From there, to see our like terms that combine, we know the 3 and the negative 28 will combine together, so they move to parentheses to show that we're allowed to do that, and that's the associative property. And then from there, the 3 plus negative 28, I would call this combining like terms. And then if you're like me and you prefer to write your variables first. Most people do. This is another example of the commutative property, again, to write your answer in a more appropriate form. Now, it's good to be thinking about why you're allowed to do things while you do them, but most of you are going to be more concerned about actually doing them in the problems. When you are simplifying an expression, if it asks you to simplify, your answer should be an expression. It should not be a number. When they ask you to evaluate, you should get a number. But when they ask you, again, to simplify, your answer will probably be an expression and still have variables and maybe variables to some exponents in there still. So order of operations with algebraic expressions. Putting everything together, we're going to combine all of our like terms and see what we get. So simplify the following algebraic expressions. Again, if these are your directions, that is a dead giveaway that your answers should probably still contain variables unless all your variables go away. So we've got 6 times in a bracket, 6 minus in parentheses y plus 3. So when you have a bracket, it's like having a parentheses. So that means we're going to work inside this parentheses, work through our order of operations, but even first inside that, you have the other set of parentheses. Now, y and 3 cannot be combined together because one has a variable and one doesn't. However, what we can do is we can potentially distribute this negative. So it's 6 times 6, now it's a plus. When the negative gets distributed, it's now negative y and negative 3. You have a few different ways that you can do things. I like to combine my terms before I distribute, but it's not wrong to distribute over addition or multiplication first, or addition or subtraction. 6 plus negative 3 is 3. A plus a negative y is really the same as minus y. Now, as we said, that bracket, though, is really exactly like a parentheses, which means I want to take this 6 and distribute it into each one. That gives me 6 times 3, which is 18. 6 times negative y is minus 6y. So you get 18 minus 6y, which is an acceptable answer because there's nothing left to combine. But if you want to reorder them, negative 6y plus 18 is equivalent and also should be an acceptable answer. Now, number 2, I'm going to work from the inside. There's a 3 on the outside, but otherwise this looks, I want to clear out the inside first. So I'm going to distribute this 3. That will give me 6y plus 3x. I also want to distribute this negative 4. So that makes negative 4y. But the negative 4 times the negative 3x will be plus 12x. And now that I've cleaned up distributed it, it's not in parentheses anymore. Much like the last problem now, I need to combine my like terms. 6y and negative 4y, the 3x and the 12x. Let's start with the 3x and 12x to get 15x. 6y minus 4y is plus 2y. Now, why did I reorder these? Because much like here, I like my variables before my constants. I also like my variables in alphabetical order when possible. But I still need to distribute this 3 as if it was a parentheses to get 45x plus 3 times 2y is 6y. And yes, is 6y plus 45x the same? Yes, it should accept either answer, and I, of course, will accept either answer. I just like my x's before y's. Similarly, if I'm going to have multiple x's, I prefer the largest exponent first. This has a lot going on. I'm going to start inside this bracket here for a second. Distribute the 3 to these two terms, even though these are both x's, because this x is squared and this one is not squared, you cannot combine them. But in here, I can distribute this 3. 3 times 2x squared is 6x squared. 3 times negative x is negative 3x. This 9 was not in the parentheses, so it is just hanging out. From here, I've got 2 sets of parentheses that I really need to distribute the number through. One thing to note is that this one is going to 2 numbers, but this minus 3 is actually going to go to all 3 inside this bracket if you're doing it. 7 times 8x squared is 56x squared. 7 times negative 3 is minus 21. If you distribute the negative with it, it'll become plus automatically, so that'll be negative 3 times 6x squared is negative 18x squared. Negative 3 times negative 3x is plus 9x. Negative 3 times positive 9 is minus 27. Once you are here, it's about combining all of your like terms. I'm going to start with my x squareds. We have 56x squared minus 18x squared. We'll do 56 minus 18 makes 38x squareds. Now I'm going to go to the next power of x down. That's the positive 9x. It has nothing to combine with, so you just bring it on down. And then finally our constants, negative 1 plus and minus 27, or negative 21 plus negative 27, which will give you, add them together, keep the negative, negative 48. Again, if there's nothing left to combine, you are now done. And this should help you. These are a little bit more challenging than the ones in the last section, but they are a little bit similar. And this will bring an end of the homeworks 1, 2, and 3 in Unit 2, and we'll look at homework 4 and 5 in the next video.